All right, everybody, welcome to the live stream. I am just trying to get some last-minute changes done. Welcome. This is the pre-show. We'll start in about 10 minutes for the 220-1001 A+ study group. That's what we're doing today. Let's pause this. I don't need to see my playback. Let's pop out the chat so I can see the chat properly. Let's turn on Stream Health, because that's almost the most important thing right now. They are doing all kinds of work in my area with the internet. That's always what you want to hear the day of a study group, by the way. It's been going on for a week. Now, I think they may be done today, but we're going to talk very quietly, not let them know. So far, so good. We are getting there. Hello, chat room. Welcome. We'll be starting in about 10 minutes. So if you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 10 minutes. Let's make sure I've got everything I need going. Recordings are going here. Recordings are going down here. You can see the Cylon is going. We are indeed live. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Get all of this together. We are, we're in November. So this is our first study group of the month. Today is 220-1001. In 2 days, on Thursday, is the 220-1002 study group. 2 study groups this week, and I'm ready to go. I've already written them up. I already know what I'm going to be asking. It's a mystery to everybody. We will find out. That's what you're doing. Do you have to work in IT in an office? You don't want to be in an office? I worked, I don't know, 20, 25 years in IT and was never in an office. Did not have an office. How you like that? So yeah, you can work in IT and not have an office. Easily. Easily. Certainly was what I was doing. Not in an office. I think I need a little bit of gain on the mic. I'm going to come up. It's hard to tell. La, 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 test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not quite to where I want to be. So I think we're okay there. I think that's a little better. I think I like that a little bit better. When I'm not hitting the mic like that, how you like that? Why is it so low? It's just me. I should probably put the keyboard farther away. That would work better. Oh. Now, when I did not have an office, that meant I had to travel places. So I spent most of my time going other places, on an airplane, in a hotel overnight. It was constant travel. So I had the frequent flyer benefits and the highest level hotel stay, and which only really helps make it just a little bit more tolerable, but only a little bit. It wasn't a lot more tolerable. It's one of those challenges with trying to make everything happen. Now, I've been fighting with all kinds of different things. That works. Fighting with this. Not sure if I'm too low or too high. I think it's all right. I think it's going to do. It'll work. It will work. Well, hello, everyone in the chat room. Hello, Maryland. Hello, Texas. What area of IT? I was a systems engineer. So I would represent products from a manufacturer, and I would go to those places. I would go see the customers, see what are you trying to do. I have a thing that can do that. Let me plug it in and show you how many of these would you like, and then go to the next one. So it was kind of a love-hate relationship that I was on mostly the pre-sale side, but I was the tech guy. So you couldn't totally hate me. You can only hate me a little bit, because there was some hate. For those of you watching who are my customers, I know there's a little bit. It's okay. It's perfectly normal. And but most of my customers actually are very nice. Very, very rarely did you get into any type of it's just anger, or even someone who invited you in but really didn't pay you any mind. That was very rare. Most people are pretty nice, which was great, because you got to travel the world and meet nice people and go to lunch, and that was your day. That's not a bad gig. So that's what I did. Now, part of my gig, part of my position I did take a position that was in marketing for a while, technical marketing. So I got to just travel around and do presentations. That's all I did. I didn't do the technical setup breakdown. I would talk about doing the technical setup and breakdown. That's what that was like. Do you have to get a bachelor's in computer science for a position like that? Thankfully, no. Computer science is more of the programming side of things. And I don't do any programming, really. And IT is not programming. This is sort of the problem we run into today is all of technology is sort of lumped into one big bucket, and people think you must know how to code to be able to do anything technical. But the reality is no, there's definitely not anything programming intensive related to IT. So is that me on the CompTIA Discord? Yes, on the Discord I am at Professor Messer on Discord. That is me indeed. I've yet to find somebody who would really want to pretend to be me. Let's face it, nobody wants to do that. We've got about 4 minutes till we get started, just under. We'll do all A+ today. Get all of those things done. Now, programmers are in IT, sort of. There is a sort of separation. There is the application development side, and then that's really computer science. I'm not talking about a department. I'm talking about an area of concentration. There are people who are in information technology who are responsible for keeping the data safe, for storing the information, for making the services available. That is IT. And then there's computer science that is programming, creating applications, building hardware, coding the hardware microprocessors, designing how the hardware will be. That has nothing to do with IT, really. So there you go. That's why there's sort of this weird thing right now where people want to push together programming and IT, and they're finding it doesn't really work so well. It doesn't work so great. Turns out programming is really, really hard, and it takes years of work to become competent in programming. And guess what? IT is really, really hard, and it takes years to be competent in IT. So why you're trying to cram together, look, you know nuclear science, let's also make you a medical doctor and cram those together. Why would you do? No, you're not going to get a good nuclear scientist or a good medical doctor if you do that. So you're never going to get a good IT person or a good programmer if you try to cram those things together. Now, is there automation in IT? Yes, there's always been automation in IT. That's nothing new. We're sort of turning it into something new. We're calling it orchestration and learning how to do Python. And yeah, we've been doing this for 30, 40 years. It's a normal thing for IT to automate. So that's why we work through those. If you're trying to get to the Socrative room, you can go to professormesser.com/QA. I'll talk about this in a moment. And if you're on Socrative, you have the Socrative app. The room name is Professor Messer, ProfessorMesser. Just make sure you spell it right, just like the name on the screen. We're going to get started here in about 1 minute and 10 seconds and get that going. There is plenty to go. Is the information you post enough to pass the exam, or will we need to do outside research? I would recommend watching the first video of the course you're interested in, where I explain exactly my strategies that I recommend and the information I recommend you have to be able to pass the exam. So we'll talk about that. Look, there's somebody, I need to make myself invisible on my website because you're not going to find me there. There's not going to be much conversation going on there. Oh, there it is. Let's make me, there you go. Because we'll be chatting on the YouTube. There we go. We'll get started here in a couple of seconds. I need to make sure I have all of my things together. It's like we do. Looks like we have everything. We could probably start this up. There it is. Very nice. I do not have a Discord. Well, I do have a Discord. If you go to professormesser.com/Discord, I do have one. It's not very busy. We don't do a lot in that Discord, but I do check on it from time to time. I don't advertise it, but it's there. Let's do a study group, though. I think we're ready to go. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the November 2019 Professor Messer A-Plus Study Group. This is our 220-1001 A-Plus Study Group. So this is that first exam that you normally would take with your A-Plus studies. We're going to do all A-Plus Q&A today. My name is James Messer. I'll be your host for this next hour of Q&A. I've got all the questions all ready to go. Just a moment, I'll talk to you about the way that you can participate and join us with those questions. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. So pop open a new browser window, go to that link, and you'll see a question waiting for you right there. You can also go to your favorite app store and download an app called the Socrative Student app. The Socrative Student app. And it will ask you for a room name. That room name is Professor Messer. Make sure you type it in right. Professormesser. Because if you don't type that in right, there'll be no question waiting for you when you get there. And that will be sad for all of us. We want you to see the question. In fact, there's a question waiting for you right now. Here it is. The question is going to ask you, a company uses an email system that's located in the cloud. Users log in with their credentials to access their mail in a browser. What type of cloud model is this? And there's some options there. If this looks familiar, by the way, this is a question from last month. So you can absolutely do that. You can look at IaaS, hybrid, private, SaaS, or PaaS. Which one of those is it? Hopefully you know to be able to have them there. So have a look at that. This is one where for those of you that have never been in the study groups before, this is all a third-party service called Socrative. You just type in your answer and you can put it in. You can see what people are typing in right now. We'll go through what some other people are looking at. We'll look at the answers to that in just a moment. I'll remind you, we do one of these study groups every month. We actually have two this week. We have a 1001 today, and in 2 days we have a 1002. During this first hour, I'm going to ask you these questions, and you're going to answer the question. So we'll talk all about that here in this first hour. In the second hour, I turn this around. So you will be able to call in. So I'll open up the phone lines. I'll give you all that information there. Don't forget about subscribing on the YouTube. If you're watching this right now, you're on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. I have a nice meeting with the YouTube people this week, thanks to you. Your support of the website, your liking of the videos, and the subscriptions of these channels are things you always hear YouTube creators tell you about. And they tell you this because it's the only way that YouTube knows that people want to see this content. So it really does go a long way. Thank you for doing that. Also, don't forget about the daily pop quiz question on the Twitter. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter, and you can join us there as well. It's the holiday season coming up. Can you believe it's November already? It's November. Can you believe it's November? There's that comedy bit already. Here we are in the November timeframe. And if you want to help support what we're doing here, another thing you can do, if you're buying anything on Amazon, go to professormesser.com/Amazon. It will redirect you over to Amazon by clicking that link. You pay nothing extra, and yet the website now gets a little bit of a commission based on the things that you purchase. So that's another way that you can help the site without having to do anything. And it really does go a long way. So we appreciate everyone who has done that already. This is going to also provide you with one CEU, a continuing education unit credit today. So I'll tell you about that sometime during the first hour. You want to be listening out for that. Today we're going to be talking about the 220-1001 and the 220-1002. All of our questions today are going to be from the 1001. 2 days from now, the next study group is the 1002 study group. These are two different exams you have to take to be able to pass the A-plus certification. They were introduced this year in January. So these are relatively new certification exams. If you're studying for the 1001 or the 1002, you're in the right place. You're studying for the right things. Just keep in mind that they update that usually about every 3 years. So if you're watching this on a replay, you go 19, 20, 21, 2022. Later on in 2022, you'll see this series finally get retired. So you got plenty of time. Plenty of time. The exam itself expects you to get a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. It's an odd scale, isn't it? But that's how they scale things. They don't really tell you much about how they do the grading. They just tell you that that's what you need to do. If you are somebody who's been studying in the past for the previous version of this exam, like the 900 series, for example, and you're now studying for the 1000 series, not much has changed. 20% though. enough has changed that you do not want to walk into the exam having studied 900 series materials. Make sure you are studying from materials from the 1000 series. If you'd like to see what the differences are, you can look at the objectives. I have created an annotated list of exam objectives and what is different. You can find that at professormesser.com/objectives. The topics on the 1001 that we're going to talk about are mobile devices, networking hardware, not networking hardware, but networking and hardware, and virtualization, cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. So we're going to have questions all from those today. And then 2 days from now, we'll deal with the questions from the 1002 exam. Also let you know that all of these courses, everything I create, every course, every video, every minute of every video is available to watch for free online. Some people like to take an offline version with them. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/download A+, where you can download HD video, MP3 audio files. If you'd like to listen in your car, you can buy just the audio files if you'd like, and my course notes. We'll talk about the course notes in just a bit. A podcast version, an audio-only version of this is available. You can go to professormesser.com/podcast to listen to all of my study groups. And of course, the live streams are available to watch on my website. The live streams also, if you go to YouTube, the YouTube information there will show you an annotated timestamp of exactly what we did and when we did it during the study group. So that'll be there about tomorrow. You can find that. So plenty of things that you could go through to look at. In fact, it's my marketing manager, Lori, that goes through and listens to this and puts in those timestamps manually. It's the only way to do it. So her sacrifice at having to listen to this whole thing is hopefully something that you'll be able to use going forward. Let's talk about that question we were just going through. A company uses an email system that is located in the cloud. Users log in with credentials to access their mail in a browser. What type of cloud model is this? If you think you know the answer, you go to professormesser.com/QA and you can answer that question. So that would be a good way to have a look at that question. The answer, by the way, and I'm not really surprising anybody with this, since 80% of you chose software as a service, that is the right answer. Software as a service is where the entire application and all of its internal workings are available out on the internet somewhere in the cloud. You don't even know where it is. All you know is you log in and you have access to it. So if you're using Google Mail, if you're using Yahoo Mail, if you're using Hotmail, if you're using any cloud-based email system, you're using software as a service. When they want to upgrade their software, they upgrade it, and you simply see the upgrade when you log in. You don't have to do any upgrades. You don't own any software. You don't own any hardware. You're not responsible for its uptime. All you do is log in and you have access. One of the great benefits of software as a service is that very thing. You have nothing you have to do. No development efforts, no configuration efforts, nothing you have to do. It's all software as a service. Now, why wasn't it one of these others? We have infrastructure as a service. That is if you are purchasing hardware. Some people like to call that hardware as a service. In fact, where somebody just gives you a cloud-based server, and then it's up to you to load the operating system, the applications, and everything else. Well, that doesn't sound like this question since the email system was already there. All we did was log in. So it's not infrastructure as a service. A hybrid cloud is one where a little bit of the cloud is public, a little bit of the cloud is private. That wasn't the situation here either. A private cloud is one that's only available to you internally within your organization. That was not the scenario here at all. We were able to access this from the internet. We just access it from a browser, and we have access to all of that. The software as a service we talked about, and then there's platform as a service. Platform as a service, I like to think of as Lego blocks, where the service provider gives you all the blocks you need to build your own application. You heard of build a bear? This is build an app. So you have to put the pieces of the bear together. You have to stuff it. You have to create a login screen. You yourself have to develop what happens after that login screen. Is this a purchase app? Is it something for accounts payable? Is it something for accounts receivable? Is it an inventory app? Is it an app to keep track of what evaluation units you've sent out? Is it an application to keep track of employee data? You have to put those building blocks together, but all the building blocks are in the cloud. And hopefully platform as a service makes it easy that they are building blocks and you don't have to build this from the ground up. So that might help you as well. So your answer here, pretty obvious. Software as a service. If you were one of the 81% that answered software as a service, you did it absolutely right. Let's go through more questions. I have plenty of questions for you. So no more previous questions. We want all of the questions that are new. So I have a whole set of new questions for this particular study group. One of the things you'll notice on your exam is the first handful of questions you get on your exam are questions that are not multiple choice. They are what is called performance-based questions. They are questions that might be fill in the blank. You might be asked to perform a function at a command line. They might be putting things in a particular order. It might be drag and drop. You might be selecting things in a certain order. So I have for you a first question of the study group, and always our first question of the study group is a performance-based question. So before I go to that, I'm going to quickly change something on my side because it doesn't show the performance-based question as a single page. So here in real time, I'm doing editing of the question. So here is your performance-based question of the day. This one's sort of a kind of a fill-in-the-blank question. The important thing here is I want you to be able to answer this on ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Please don't put any hints or any answers in the chat room. Here is the question where I have written out for you 5 different 802.11 standards. 802.11a, B, G, N, and AC. And for each one of those, I want you to pick the frequency that is used by that standard. I want you to tell me if MIMO is used by that standard. And if you don't know what the MIMO is, then we do have a problem. We'll talk more about that in a moment. And then as a bonus fill in the blank question, I want you to put what the per stream maximum theoretical throughput is for each of these standards. See if you remember what that happens to be. See how much of this you can fill in. These are your 5 wireless standards to be able to work with. Remember, do not answer in the chat room. You want to answer by going to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, where it's a fill in the blank. And you can put those things. Some folks are already answering. Can you believe they put answers in? The answer they put was, I don't know, which is fine. If you don't know the answer to this, that's okay. In fact, this is great that you're here. If you don't know what these things are, we're going to tell you what they are. And if some of this information shows up on your exam, you'll now know what it is. That's one of the benefits of attending the study group. I try to get about half of you getting these right and about half of you getting these wrong. I don't try that. I just want to make it hard enough so that it is challenging to you when you come into this study group that you're working through some of these things. Now, there are these 5 standards. These are the 5 standards you need to know for the 802.11 standards you have to know for the 220.1001 exam. They are all listed on the exam. And knowing what the frequencies are and knowing if it supports MIMO can be pretty useful, not just for things you might do at work, but this can be really useful for you at home. Because some of you have a 802.11g access point and you're wondering, should I upgrade to an N? Or maybe you have an N and you're wondering, should I upgrade to an AC? Is that going to give me really any benefit? And now you need to be able to make those decisions. The only way you're going to make those decisions would be to understand what the nuances are and the features of each one of these wireless standards. A lot of you are already putting these things in. A lot of you are copying and pasting the answer in, which doesn't help actually. You have to choose. Well, actually, some of you are copying, pasting, and then putting the right answer, which is great. Most of you are doing that. And a lot of you are saying, I'm just not familiar with these. I don't know about this, which is fine too, because we are going to go through the whole thing for you to figure this out. Sometimes people look at these questions as sort of a trivia question, and this one is a bit of a trivia question. I'm not giving you a scenario. I'm not asking you to resolve a particular problem with this question. And you do find that a lot of these are questions on the exam that do have a little bit more to them. So you'll find a lot of the multiple choice questions we do today are a little more involved. There's a little more thinking involved. But there's so much wireless on the exam, I thought it would be nice to do a review of what some of these things are. This will be useful to go through. So let's see if we can go through what some of these are. Let's start with 802.11a. So a lot of you are putting in the frequencies for 802.11a. I'm going to scroll through this because this is fill in the blank. A lot of you were spot on with 802.11a. Some of you missed this one, but the frequency used in 802.11a is 5 gigahertz. That is a 5 gigahertz technology that does not use MIMO. We'll talk about the MIMO in just a moment. And the per stream maximum theoretical throughput for 802.11a is 54 megabits a second. So you've got different options that you can go through for 802. You probably won't see any 802.11a though. You probably will see some 802.11a in a really, really, really old, maybe a network that's in a warehouse. Maybe they have a particular piece of hardware that has to connect and all it knows is A, but you don't really find those anymore. Those are A and B came out so long ago that you very rarely see A and B. They were really introduced about the same time. The 802.11b standard supported 2.4 gigahertz, completely different range of frequencies. It also did not support MIMO and relatively slow when you compared it to A. And B became very popular. The 2.4 gigahertz chipset was probably less expensive, so a lot of people got B as their first standard, but I say it only went 11 megabits per second. But at the time, we really didn't have a good wireless standard, so it was great to even have 11 megabits per second. When G came out, it really changed things. We were able to get 2.4 gigahertz. We changed the way the communication occurred over those networks. Still did not have MIMO. MIMO is pretty important these days, but we were able to up the speeds to 54 megabits per second. So that was very nice. Now, we really started seeing changes right here with the 802.11n. This standard supports both 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. So we have both of these standards available. If you get an 802.11 access point, it might do one or the other or both to be able to do that. So that helps too. If you're ever in a situation where you're trying to figure out, what do I do with this technology? What frequencies are available? Your 802.11n access point may give you options to use frequencies in the 2.4 gigahertz range or frequencies in 5 gigahertz range. And this was one of the first standards to support multiple input, multiple output, which is incredibly useful. Speeds on this up to 150 megabits per second per stream, which is nice. There are multiple streams that can be used simultaneously with these. The latest version of these, and some of you are saying, but I thought 802.11n went 600 megabits per second. Yes, because you can use up to 4 streams on 802.11n, and 4 times 150, 600 megabits per second. See how that works? The last standard here, 802.11ac, only operates at 5 gigahertz per second. There's so much more frequencies available at that standard. You also have multiple input. In fact, you have multi-user MIMO available in 802.11ac, which means you can have multiple streams communicating to multiple people on a wireless network over the same frequencies. How do they do that? It's like magic. Per stream, you also have a major increase in speed up to 866.7 megabits per second. So imagine increasing this by a certain number of streams. Incredible. Now, if you go to the video that is in the 2.4 section of the 221,001, the video that's called 802.11 Wireless Network Standards, I have all of those standards mapped out for you. So you can see exactly what the options are for those standards. This is a nice chart to be able to memorize for your exam, something that would be nice to know. If you're doing anything with wireless, it's really nice to be able to pull these things out of your head at a glance. You never know when you're walking into a site and they've got an access point on the wall. Now you as an engineer need to figure out, what is that access point? What is it using? What frequencies are in use? Is it the right type of access point for this particular scenario? This information is going to help you know that. So helpful to know all of those things, and hopefully you'll be able to memorize these. I think as you use these over time, they just become very familiar to you. It's not even memorization at that point. So work on those standards. Again, that comes from my section 2.4 video on 802.11 wireless network standards. That's our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you were able to learn a few things as we went through that. Got a lot of options available for those different pieces. Keep in mind also that you need to, of course, know the difference between a per stream throughput and a total number of throughput too. Also, there are differences and limitations when you get to 802.11ac. We run out of bandwidth. We run out of frequency space is our biggest problem. So there's differences there that you also need to keep in mind as well. Let's do some multiple choice questions today. I've got some available. In fact, next on our list is a multiple choice question. Let's see how you do. Remember, no answering in the chat room. Our multiple choice question asks, a user is complaining about a burning smell coming from their computer case. Which of the following should be the first troubleshooting step for this issue? A user is complaining about a burning smell coming from their computer case. Which of the following should be the first troubleshooting step for this issue? Should it be remove the cover and visually inspect the system? Should it be to check the logs for any significant events? Should it be to disconnect the power source? Should it be to reboot the system into safe mode? Or should it be to perform a hardware diagnostic? Those are your 5 options available. If you think you know the option, again, no answering in the chat room. You want to answer by going to professormesser.com/QA and locking in your answer right there. These are ones whenever you start working through all of the different scenarios for troubleshooting, you will see questions like this on your exam. So be ready for this terminology for somebody saying, I need to understand what the first thing I need to do. I need to know what the next thing I need to know. I need to understand what the best thing is to be able to do this. So make sure that you are familiar with exactly what these different requirements are for the question. Read through it. And normally they have it capitalized so you know what is best, what is first, what is the things you should do. Hopefully that will be something you can work through. There's a lot of different directions you can go with this. And I've heard people tell me different things that they have done when they've smelled a burning smell coming from the computer case. Let's see how we do with this one. I think this is another one of those where we also have to keep in mind what is important with what we are doing in our jobs too. Sometimes we can lose sight of that. So think about this question very carefully and lock in your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA and get that answer locked in. A lot of you already locked it in, so let's see how you did with this one. I'm going to click the How Do We Do button. 92% of you think that you should disconnect the power source. Well, if you disconnect the power source, how are you going to know what caused this problem? How are you going to be able to trouble? No, of course you should disconnect the power source. Absolutely. It should not even be a question. There should be 100% of you getting this one right. Absolutely disconnect the power source. Whenever there is any type of smoke in the type of electronics world, we call this magic smoke because the smoke is really what's making the computer work. And when the magic smoke is let out of the computer, it no longer is working. So obviously, if we were able to keep the smoke in, it would be working okay. That's a little tongue-in-cheek, of course, but having anything that is smoking is indicative of some type of electrical issue, and we should immediately remove the electrical part from the equation. You could, of course, have a system create even more damage, and worst case scenario, it could even potentially catch on fire. These are electronic components with higher voltages inside of them, and they do have the ability to catch on fire. So we want to be able to do that. You do not want to do anything else when you have that type of situation, but completely unplug it. At that point, you need to figure out what's going on. So whenever you have anything burning, you don't want to turn it off and turn it back on. You don't want to look at any log files. You don't want to remove the cover and visually inspect the system. Now, you do want to do that second, is open the cover and visually inspect the system. Disconnecting the power source is the first thing you should do. And that was the question, by the way, is to do the first thing and to be able to do that. Being able to unplug it is pretty important with these. So make sure you don't have to switch it off at the breaker. Your wire that you are using to plug into the wall is insulated. You're okay. You don't have to worry about that. Now, if you're using a wire that is frayed, where you can see the wires and the electrical wires inside, maybe you've got a whole set of different problems you're going to have to work through. But our electrical wires are insulated. You can unplug them. directly from the wall and you'll be okay. Do not worry about that. So it seems like this should be common sense, but only 91% of us got this one right. Checking the logs means you're continuing to have the system up and running. Not a good idea. Rebooting the system into safe mode. Again, you've got a whole system that is now running that is smoking. No, that's not what you want to do. Performing a hardware diagnostic. You will eventually get to that point, but this will not be the case. You go, if you have anything that is smoking or there's a problem, then there is a component inside this computer that is having an issue. There's something that now needs to be repaired. And you now need to figure out what that component is, whether you're replacing the entire component. Are you pulling out an entire power supply? Are you replacing an entire video card? Are you replacing an entire motherboard? Or are you having someone knowledgeable repair individual components on that device? Sometimes that happens as well. So the situation that you'll run into on the A+ exam is they really will ask you about electrical problems because you will run into these in the real, we call it the real world. I like to just call it the world because we're all in the real world. These are things that happen all the time. So make sure you disconnect power always, always. So well done with that one. Before we go to this next question, the 92% of you answered C, disconnect the power source. That was the right answer. Well done. That's the first thing you should always do. Never, ever have a system plugged in where you're inside of it. Never work on a system that is directly connected to a power source. Of course, if you're somebody who is doing electrical repair, you're extremely familiar with electrical repair, which is not most of us, quite honestly. If this is something where you're a person that replaces components, unplug your devices, and then work inside of those devices, and you'll be fine. Certainly what you should do. Let's do another question. This one is a user in the accounting department upgrading the memory in their laptop. Which of these components would commonly be used? The options are SODIMM, L3 cache, SSHD, ECC, and SDR. Those are your 5 different options. A user in the accounting department is upgrading the memory in their laptop. Which of these components would commonly be used? Is it SODIMM, L3 cache, SSHD, ECC, or SDR? You think you know the answer? Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Please don't put any answers in the chat room, of course. You want to lock in your answer right there at ProfessorMesser.com/QA. One of the best places to go for locking in your answer. Maybe some of you have upgraded some of these in your systems. You've had to work with laptops and you've got memory upgrades you've had to do. What have you used to be able to do that? This might be useful to be able to know exactly how to do that. It certainly is useful for your exam. This is one of those scenario questions where here's a scenario. How do you go through the process of now performing that particular function that solves that scenario? This is something I have run into on my laptops too. So if you have and you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and lock in that answer. The questions I have in the study group are designed to see how much you have learned by watching the videos and reading your book and doing some hands-on. These are not specifically intended to emulate exam questions, but I do try to put a little bit of the flavor of the exam into these. So if you're looking through this and you understand the technologies that are being asked and you can pick them out in this list, then you're probably doing pretty good to be able to do that. Hopefully you are familiar with these. Let's see how we did with this one. User in the accounting department upgrading the memory on their laptop. Which of these components would commonly be used? 88% of you say it's SODIMM. 7% said it's SSHD. 2% say L3 cache. 2% say ECC. And 0%, although somebody did answer, I guess a rounding thing, said SDR, which was sort of a made-up thing. Not really when you want to go through these that you would work through the different answers with those, but hopefully it's one that you've been working through. SODIMM is exactly the type of memory you would find on a laptop. It's a little bit smaller than the DIMM modules you would have inside of a full-sized desktop computer. It's one where the SODIMM fits that particular form factor. It's a little smaller. Obviously, because it's a little smaller, it's a little more expensive than full-size memory modules, but because it's smaller, you can fit it into these smaller environments like a laptop. And our laptops, of course, are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. We're even seeing laptops these days where the memory is simply on the motherboard itself. You can't even swap it out. It's not a module. You can't replace it. You don't run into those scenarios a lot, but you do run into them. So hopefully that's something that you're familiar with when you start working through and trying to determine, where do I go with this? What different options are available? It's going to be either a SODIMM or even smaller than the SODIMM, a microDIMM. That SODIMM, by the way, stands for a small outline dual inline memory module. The full-size memory modules on an ATX motherboard, for example, are the dual inline memory modules, or just DIMMs. So when you get into the smaller size, it's called a small outline DIMM, a SODIMM. Exactly where that comes from. Even smaller devices might use the micro dual inline memory modules, which are a little bit smaller, but you might see those in some of the mobile devices and laptops these days. So be familiar with those form factors. If you go back and look at the video that is in section 1.1 under laptop hardware, I put these next to each other. It may actually be in section 3 under hardware, but I have that video where I show you all of the different memory modules next to each other so you can see the relative size of all of those. Comes in handy to be able to do that. This one is not one that fooled anybody either. 89% of you said, yes, SODIMM is exactly what I would use. You folks know exactly what you would run into if you were asked a question like that on your exam. The A+ certification is a broad certification. There are multiple exams that you have to take, the 1001 and the 1002, covering everything from hardware to networking to security to operating systems. You have to know Windows, and you have to know Mac OS, and you have to know Linux, and there's so much there that you have to know about. A lot of you will watch my videos, and I highly recommend that you take notes as you go through the videos. It's just something we normally do, but a lot of you don't have time to do all of that note taking. And of course, you may have a limited amount of time for your studies. So I've tried to accelerate that process for you and provide you with a set of notes that are a complete summary of every single one of my videos. You can find more about this with Professor Messer's A+ course notes. These are the course notes that come directly from the videos. My 220 1001 course notes, 58 pages long. So you can see that there is extensive bullets, extensive graphics. When you get into the pictures of devices, you can even see what the pictures are. All of this comes directly from the videos. You miss nothing. They are extensive. So if you want to get more detail, you want to have that extra piece of information you can use along with your books, along with the videos, along with the Q&A, and along with the hands-on you're doing, you might want to look at these course notes. You can find out more about these at professormesser.com/1000notes, 1000 notes. And that may be something that can help you as you go through your A+ studies. I want to thank you for your ongoing support with these course notes as well. Let's do some more multiple choice questions. Our next question asks, cue it up for you over on the Socrative side. A technician in another department has terminated a network cable. Which of these can be used to determine the wire map of this cable? Which of these can be used to determine the wire map of this cable? Should you use a tone generator, a crimper, a multimeter, a loopback plug, a punch-down tool? Those are your 5 different options. A technician in another department has terminated a network cable. Which of these can be used to determine the wire map of this cable? A tone generator, a crimper, a multimeter, a loopback plug, or a punch-down tool? If you think you know the answer, please know answering in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Once it's locked in, you can't change it. Folks in the chat room saying, wait, I want to change my answer. Too late. So close. You lock it in. There's no way to go back. Now, on your actual A+ exam, you can absolutely go back and change your question, which is actually a relatively unique thing in our industry. Not all certification exams allow you to jump around the exam. This might be a pretty good exam strategy for you, knowing that you can jump from question to question. Don't dwell on any question. If you don't know, just go to the next one. You can always come back to it. In fact, you can flag it. You can hit a check mark, flag that question, and then you can come, it'll tell you missed that one. You flagged that one. You want to come back and answer that question there as well. Comes in handy to have that piece of it there. Folks in the chat room asking if this is live. This is pretty live if you're here on a Tuesday at noon something Eastern. What are we at? 12:35 Eastern time. You are at, and that little button there at the top, the little live logo is your clue. Now, if you're watching this in a replay, obviously you can't follow along. You can't answer the question in Socrative, but you can follow along with us at least to have those things there. So that can be useful to go through all of these. Let's see how well your networking knowledge is. We've been doing pretty well so far. If I had to ask the audience for the questions so far, we would have been pretty good. A technician in another department has terminated a network cable. Which of these can be used to determine the wire map of this cable? How did we do? 61% of us say tone generator. 5% said crimper. 13% said multimeter. 17% say loopback plug. And 5% say punch down tool. This is one where this question is not giving us the answer we were expecting, because a lot of you have looked at wire maps before and you've used a cable tester. That shows you the wire map. If you really wanted to go advanced, you could even do a time domain reflectometer, a TDR. That's another much more advanced tool, but that would also show you a wire map. But a cable tester and a TDR were not listed here. This is one of these things where people, they think that these are trick questions that CompTIA will do, but CompTIA loves to do this, where they don't give you what the most common answer is. What if your cable tester was broken? What if you didn't have a cable tester? What if your company did not have a TDR available? What would you use? Well, you go into your toolbox and you pull out your multimeter. That is what you would use to be able to perform a wire map. The multimeter has a function on it that will show you continuity. Continuity is a way to tell, does the wire connect from one end to another? So the continuity that you would run into on your system is one where you'd be able to put a probe on one end of a pin on one end of the cable, a pin on the other end of the cable. Are they connected to each other? So you could build out the wire map by using this multimeter. Now, multimeters also do other things as well. They can tell you the AC power coming out of a power connector. In fact, here's a good example of somebody looking at the 220 volt connector. Definitely not in the US. Looks like you're in the UK, plugging into their power connectors and being able to see what the voltages are coming from there. You could also look at the DC power that is inside of your computer or inside of your laptop. Incredibly useful. If you have not become familiar with multimeters, you really should. There's some great videos on the YouTube that can help you understand just the basics of using a multimeter. Just knowing the basics allows you to really troubleshoot problems that previously you had no control of troubleshooting. So be very familiar to be able to do this. Now, people are saying, but wait, this question, how could it be a multimeter? The question asked, a technician in another department has terminated a network cable. We didn't say how long the cable was. We didn't say that it was going from one end of the building to the other. It could be a 3-foot cable. It could be a 10-foot cable just sitting in front of you. So it's very easy to get both ends of this and be able to do this. Which of these can be used to determine the wire map of this cable? In fact, the multimeter is your only option that would be able to provide that to you. So let's step through the other answers and determine why those other answers were not the right answer, because 59% of you chose a tone generator. A tone generator, an extremely useful tool that allows you to put an analog signal, a tone, onto a copper wire, and then with an inductive probe, you can go to the other end of the building if that's where that cable is run, and in a huge bundle of cables, you can touch all of the cables with the inductive probe and find the cable that has that analog tone going through it. Very useful for helping find an entire cable, but it doesn't tell you anything about the wire map. A wire map, by the way, really didn't explain what that was, is we have 8 pins on one side of an Ethernet cable. We have 8 pins on the other side of an Ethernet cable. What pins are connected to the other side? What pins are connected from one end to the other? Is pin 1 connected to pin 1? Is pin 2 connected to pin 2? Is pin 3 connected to pin 3? Or are they different? Have they been switched around? Maybe it's a crossover cable. Is pin 6 connected to pin 1? Is pin 8 connected to pin 1? We never know where those things are. So that's one where you would find out exactly what you can use with this to be able to use those functions. A tone generator, very useful for finding a cable. Doesn't help you at all for being able to create a wire map. The second most popular option, a loopback plug. Loopback plug's also something you should have in your toolbox. Whenever somebody shows up and says, we think there's a problem with the Ethernet interface on this particular server, you may want to run some hardware diagnostics. And one of the things you might want to do is send traffic out of that interface and then have traffic come right back into the interface and then measure, did you receive exactly the same traffic that you sent? Was there corruption? Did it even get sent out so I could receive it? A loopback cable allows you to do this. So you can plug in a loopback, run your diagnostics, run a series of tests, be able to send lots of traffic and see if you're able to receive exactly what you're sending. That's what you would do with a loopback plug, but a loopback plug is not going to help you be able to determine what the wire map of a cable happens to be. You also have multimeter was our third most popular. Only 16% said multimeter, but that is the right answer. Answer C. And then a tie for fourth. 4% of you said a crimper. A crimper is the tool you would use to put an RJ45 or some other type of connector onto the end of a cable. Again, doesn't really help you if you're trying to map the wires out. I guess visually you can use if you don't have a multimeter, but a crimper is not going to help you at all to determine what the wire map is. And a punch down tool is useful for putting individual wires into a punch down block that's on the wall. Those aren't going to help you with a wire map either. So you've got these two ends of an Ethernet cable. They're both probably got an RJ45 on it. Sometimes it's really useful to know how they're wired. And if you don't have, you can't really tell by putting them next to each other. Sometimes you can't tell visually. Then being able to use a multimeter, that's all you have. That is going to work perfectly to be able to make that happen. So that is the right answer. Now, if you're watching this video for continuing education credit, then here's the process you want to use to be able to earn a 1 hour of a webinar category credit. You can go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link on the top or the bottom. Click that Contact Us link and be able to, it'll put you into a form. On that form, you want to put that this is the November 2019 221,001 A+ study group. It will ask you for your name and your email address. Make sure those are right because I emailed this back to you. And then somewhere in the body of that particular form, make sure that you put it somewhere I can really see it. Don't hide it within a sentence somewhere. Sometimes I miss them and then you don't get your CEU. Just put on a single line the word multimeter. That is your super secret code word of the month. So go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, look at the form, put in your name, your email address, say that's November 2019 A+ study group, and put the word multimeter. This will be great. And if you don't have a good multimeter, they're relatively inexpensive. You can get a good multimeter for less than 20 bucks. You will use this multimeter. I think I have 2 or 3. I have one that's very small. I carry with me everywhere I go in my bag for work purposes. I don't carry it on vacation. I should carry it on vacation. It comes in handy. But it's one I carry with me wherever I go in my tool bag. And then I have one I keep here in the studio because I'm always looking at power. I'm trying to do continuity. Sometimes you run into a device that's not working. You need to understand, is it getting any voltage? Great tool to use. Be able to have those there and have all of those pieces. Make sure you're familiar. This could be also a great skill to have, not just for the A+. You can use this everywhere. People get amazed. They have a question like, let's find out. I'll pull up my multimeter. And they're wondering, what is this? What are you doing? It's just a multimeter. There's no weird science here. Very useful to know. Make sure you're very familiar with using those multimeters. Let's do another multiple choice question. We got time. Here is a question. If you're trying to put together a computer, the question is asking you, which of the following would be the most important on a CAD-CAM computer? Which of the following would be most important on a CAD-CAM computer? Is it an enhanced audio adapter? Is it a high-end video card? Is it a RAID array? Or is it liquid cooling? There are four things. You only have four options on this one. It's like a real exam question on this one. Which of the following would be most important on a CAD CAM computer? Is it an enhanced audio adapter, a high-end video card, a RAID array, or liquid cooling? So some of you in the chat room are already asking, what's a CAD CAM? Sorry, that is part of the question that you have to know because it comes directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And they often will do this on a question, is they use the abbreviated terminology as part of the question, naturally assuming that you will know what that means so that you could then answer the question. Now, if you think you know the answer, don't put anything in the chat room. Don't say what it is. Don't give any hints. We're going to go to professormesser.com/QA and answer it right there. So that may be useful to have those there. On the exam, most of the questions will have like this. There'll be four answers there that you choose from. But there are some multiple choice questions on the exam that might have 5 options. They might have 6 and 7. They might ask you to choose 2 from a list of 7 or 8. So you never know exactly how many different options might be there to have those things there. So you never know what things you might run into on the exam. Make sure that you're able to piece all of those things together. That may be something you need to work through. You're trying to figure out, do I answer one or the other? Have a look at all those. Maybe that would be useful to have that there. There are probably about a handful of performance-based questions you'll get on your exam. I say a handful, that's 5. 5 is a hand, but you might get more and you might get less. We just don't know exactly how many you will get when working through this. A lot of you have blocked in your answer. Let's see how you've done with this one. Which of the following would be most important for a CAD CAM computer? How did we do? I haven't looked yet. I never look. I always like to see that. 83% of you say high-end video card. So is this one of those situations where whenever you get into these questions, are we locked into this? Is it really high-end video card? 8% of you said liquid cooling. 7% of you said RAID array. And 2% of you said enhanced audio adapter. So the real place we should start, I think, on this question is CAD CAM. What in the world is a CAD CAM? So this is something you will run into eventually, and being able to work through all of these here. It's a place that you should go through and think about these. Computer-aided design is CAD, and computer-aided management is the CAM. We often call these the similar things. So if you're in a situation where you're thinking these are two different types of systems, technically they could be two different types of systems, but we generally lump them into the same category and call them CAD CAM. One of the things that is very similar across both computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing is that there's a lot of graphics involved here. You can see on this desktop, this is a CAD CAM system where he's not only got a keyboard, he's got a stylus, and he's typing it into or using a pen to be able to do some of the things he's doing on this CAD CAM system, and a very graphical front end. So the things that would be very useful on a system that is a high processing system, but it's extremely graphic system, you're going to need a number of different things. You're going to need some storage that can keep up with all of this because you're going to be loading and storing some extremely large files. Whenever we started looking at high-speed networks, this is one of the networks that really took advantage of high speeds because they were having to transfer such large files back and forth over the network. High-end video is obviously an important part of this because you've got extremely graphical displays. There's zooming in, there's zooming out, there's 3D modeling that's going on. There's a lot of high-end graphics on these systems, and that means that you're going to need a lot of memory on these systems to be able to have these CAD CAM software, be able to keep all of this in memory, be able to render all of this at the same time in memory, look at it in different ways, see the designs of what's there. It's a very powerful system. It needs to be a very powerful system. And so if we look at the different options available on this question, we were asking which of these would be most important on a CAD CAM system. And this is the one you would run into. Do we need enhanced audio on CAD CAM? You don't need any audio generally on a CAD CAM system. The most basic audio, certainly not enhanced audio adapter. If we were doing video editing, if we were doing audio editing, then we would need some nice audio. For CAD CAM, it's primarily graphics. Audio is not necessary. Liquid cooling. Well, liquid cooling can be useful, but CAD CAM doesn't have an enormous constant CPU requirement. There's no enormous thermal issue that you would think you'd be running into above and beyond the normal thermal issues you would have with a computer. As we know, liquid cooling is generally something that you would use when just the heat of a system is so overwhelming. That would be a very specific application, I would imagine. Or perhaps you didn't want the fan noises. Maybe you were in an environment that was very quiet, like this one. I don't want any fans in here. I've got all of these systems and a microphone. I don't want you to hear anything. If I stop talking, I really don't want you to hear anything else going on in this room. So I don't need a lot of loud fans. Maybe liquid cooling works for me, but certainly not a necessity on a CAD CAM system. And the last one, a RAID array, that might be useful for CAD CAM. A RAID array obviously is one where we can have multiple drives so we can store this information. A RAID array usually useful for having on a centralized storage system, but not something you would have on a CAD CAM computer itself. Would it be useful? Sure, I guess it could be. You could have redundancy. You could store files locally. You wouldn't have a requirement for storing them across the network and having to deal with slower network speeds. But it's not something that would be the most important given all four of these. If we are evaluating all four of these, the clear winner, the most important one, a high-end video card. 84% of you got that one absolutely right. So well done. That's exactly where you would have those. This is one of those where there are a series of machine and configurations you need to know about on the exam. CAD CAM is one of them. There's a gaming machine. There's a machine that is network attached storage. There's some others in there too. So you need to know what all of those different types of systems are and what the requirements are, what the more important and less important requirements are for each of those. And that should help you as you get into understanding some of the nuances of how you would design these systems. You might have somebody in your CAD CAM department show up and go, I need a new computer. Hey, spec that out for me, thanks. Where do you even start? Well, you can start with these four things. Get them an SSD, get them high-end video, give them max RAM, and then everything else is gravy at that point. But those are the three places you would probably start if you were designing a CAD CAM graphics workstation. Hopefully you did pretty well on that. Those of you that answered, 84% of you high-end video card got it absolutely right. Let's do another question. Got one for you. This is a question coming from section 4, I think, which is virtualization. The question asks, a user is configuring a virtual machine on their Windows desktop and would like the IP address of the VM to use the same IP address of their workstation. Which of these settings should be configured? Would it be QoS, bridged, private, public, or NAT? A user is configuring a virtual machine on their Windows desktop and would like the IP address of the VM to use the same IP address of their workstation. Which of these settings should be configured? QoS, bridged, private, public, or NAT? You think you know the answer? Go to professormesser.com/QA. Lock it in. See if you can figure out all of those specifics. See if you know what the answer would be. If you've ever configured a VM on your desktop, this might be one to be able to use for this. Going back to that previous question, people in the chat room asking a few questions about that. Am I using liquid cooling? I'm not using liquid cooling. The system that I have primarily that I use is this larger iMac Pro in front of me. It does, but it's a very large heat sink in the back. The fan rarely runs. And for doing what we're doing right here, it doesn't run at all. So it's completely silent. If I load up Diablo 3, there's a lot of graphics. There's a lot of CPU. The fan starts to run. So we're not playing Diablo 3 right now, unfortunately. So that's one that does come in handy to have something so quiet there. So not an issue. The laptop next to me as well, that laptop is also cooled with a fan. But again, it's not doing anything that would cause that fan to even turn on right now. So that's one of a nice situation to be in. So don't have to worry about liquid cooling in here. Also, you don't really see it I'll see if I can bring back this view for these of you who answered the question. To the left and right of me are 19-inch racks that are built into the desk, and they are closed off, and they have some foam inside of it to keep it silent in there. There's actually a pretty loud recording device. You cannot hear it on this microphone. It's such a good mic, this Heil PR40. But there is a couple of fans running with the recording device down here that's pretty loud. In fact, the monitor that's up here is a fan inside of it, this 4K monitor. You can't hear it on this mic, though. So a lot of the noise that's in here gets minimized because of the type of microphone I'm using, which was on purpose to be able to have this here. Yes, the Diablo 4 people in the chat room, I saw it. But they gave no dates. We don't know when anything's happening with this. Let's see how we did with this answer. A user is configuring a virtual machine on their Windows desktop, would like the IP address of the VM to use the same IP address of their workstation. Which of these settings should be configured? Is it QoS, bridged, private, public, and NAT? 50% of you say bridged. So, or 49% of you. We're going to say, write it down the middle. 49% say bridged. 29% of you say NAT. 13% of you say private. So if we go with double digits, we have 3 to choose from. Single digits, 5% said QoS, 4% said public. Well, if you look and load up, and if you haven't loaded up, by the way, a virtual machine manager on your desktop, I don't care if you're running Windows or Linux or Mac OS or anything else, you need to load up a virtual machine environment. I highly recommend go out and grab VirtualBox. VirtualBox is free. You can download it, install it, and start using virtual machines on your desktop. So if you're running Windows 10, you can download a Windows 7 virtual machine and run Windows 7 on your desktop in a little window or even full screen. A lot of the real-time views you see of me using the operating, in fact, all of the real-time views you see of me using the operating systems on my videos are all done in a VM. So I'm still running Mac OS in front of me, but I'm showing you Windows 10 because it's a full-blown Windows 10 system. I'm able to do that because I'm running VirtualBox or running VMware or running Parallels or running any of the number of different apps you can use. Please go do that. In fact, if you're looking for a copy of Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows 10 for your A+ certification, go to modern.ie. You can download a VM from there for free. That's modern.ie, modern.ie. All the VMs are there. I'll show you that in the after show if you're interested. When you set up the virtual machine manager software on your computer, it will ask, how do you want the VM to be able to communicate out to the actual real network? And you have a number of options available. You can bridge it. You can share it. You can create a private network that no one else can get to. Our question specifically asked that we wanted the virtual machine to use the same IP address of the workstation. Now, how can you get multiple computers to use the same IP address? Well, if you look at your virtual machine management software, they're going to call that a shared network address. And what it's really doing is performing network address translation, or NAT. Network address translation is the process of modifying a source or destination IP address as traffic is traversing the network. So the VM is using one IP address, it sends it to your real computer, which performs network address translation, and now it's able to share the same IP address out to the rest of the network. That is a pretty useful tool to have. And so to the rest of everybody else on the network, they look like they're communicating directly to your real computer, but actually they're communicating to the VM that is running on your real computer. Very useful to have that. If you wanted to have each VM act as a separate machine on your network that got its own DHCP address, it had its own IP address that was unique from anybody else in the network, you would set a configuration called bridged. And that's one where the VM is acting just like a separate physical computer that's sitting on your network. Pretty useful to have that there. And one of the last options you'll have is private network. You could tell the VM, do not talk to the public network, do not talk to the internet, do not talk to my computer, only talk to other VMs you may be running. Because you can run multiple VMs on your desktop, and maybe only those VMs talk to each other on their own little private network. A good way to do it. Now, if we look at our options, our answers we had here, 49% of you said bridged. A bridged IP configuration meant that the device, the VM that's running on your computer would have a unique IP. It would not be using the same IP address of your computer. So bridged would not be the right answer. A private network address would be one just for the VM, again, not using the IP address of your computer. QoS is a type of management of traffic going across your network, quality of service. That has nothing to do with the IP address that you happen to be using. Public means that you're assigning it an IP address. It's a public IP address. You probably are not. You probably would never do anything like that. The one that is the right answer, the network address translation. 30% of you chose network address translation. That is the right answer. So that's one that you can easily set up to perform that translation of whatever IP address your VM is using, translate it to be the IP address that is used by your physical computer. That is the right answer. 30% of you chose network address translation. That was the right answer. Now we've got, we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more question. I think we can fit one more in. We're going to do a little bit of overtime on this. I'm feeling like we need to get one more question in today. So let's do one more. And I'm doing this one because I know how much everybody loves troubleshooting printers. So let's do a printer troubleshooting question. Here's our next and last question of the study group before we open up the phone lines. The question asks, a network printer is no longer operating, and a check of the queue shows 7 jobs waiting to print. There are no messages appearing on the printer. Which of the following would be your next troubleshooting step? Would you restart the print spooler? Would you reboot the user's laptop and print again? Would you power cycle the printer? Would you install the latest printer drivers on the client laptop? Or would you replace the printer's network cable? Those are your 5 options. The question, let's go through it very carefully. A network printer is no longer operating, and a check of the queue shows 7 jobs waiting to print. There are no messages appearing on the printer. Which of the following would be your next troubleshooting step? Would it be to restart the print spooler? Would it be to reboot the user's laptop and print again? Would it be to power cycle the printer? Would it be to install the latest printer drivers on the client laptop? Or would it be to replace the printer's network cable? Those are your 5 They all sound like good options to me. Is it really what we should be doing? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock it in. And the chat room is so happy that we are doing printer questions. For those of you that aren't looking at the replay and viewing the live chat that's coming on the replay, they're loving the printer questions. Cannot get enough printer questions. So happy to do more printer questions for you. But there's quite a number of printer questions you're going to get on the exam. There's a huge section of Section 3 for the hardware that deals with printer questions, and even more questions in the troubleshooting that deal with printer questions. And quite honestly, you're going to be doing some printer troubleshooting in your world, wherever you happen to be. So the better you are at printer troubleshooting, the less irritating this is going to be for you to have this here. So people in the chat room want more information. Is it doing this? Is it doing that? You don't know. All you know is this information. Every question you get on your exam is only based on what's inside the question. You should only make your decisions based on any more of those things. So hopefully that's one that you'll run into. This happens to be a timely question because there is, for some reason, this, I guess maybe it was a bug that's introduced with one of the latest Windows 10 updates where a lot of people are running into this problem. So maybe that's a hint. Maybe that will help. I'm not sure. I'm waiting to get half of you answering this one. We'll get another couple locked in. Yeah, why didn't I put more toner into this? It's always, you always see a toner question on these for some reason, don't you? To have these in here. Let's see how we did. A network printer is no longer operating. A check of the queue shows 7 jobs waiting to print. There are no messages appearing in the printer. And very careful, make sure you read the question which asks, which of the following would be your next troubleshooting step? And it's asking you based on the following. You only have 5 things that you are able to do. for many reasons. There may be things you would rather do first. You can't do those. Maybe you don't have access to the printer. Maybe you don't have direct way to walk over and look at the printer. All you have is what they're telling you. But here are the 5 things. Restart the print spooler, reboot the user's laptop, power cycle the printer, install the latest printer drivers, or replace the printer's network cable. 56% of you say restart the print spooler. That's a nice majority. 31% of you say turn it off and turn it back on again. Isn't that the universal thing you should do? Power cycle the printer. 6% say replace the printer's network cable. The 4% say install the latest printer drivers, and 3% say reboot the user's laptop. Those last 3 single digits, probably not what we would need to deal with. The real question here was, what do we do between these two? Power cycle the printer or restart the print spooler? I thought, as I was writing the question, I would probably recycle the printer as my first thing. So I added another sentence to the question that says, there are no messages appearing on the printer. So the printer's not giving you any specific feedback that anything is wrong. It's just sitting there waiting. It's waiting for you to print. Send me a print. You're just not out of paper. It's not out of memory. It's not out of toner. It hasn't got a jam. It's just sitting there. There's no messages on the printer. So we can, from that, make some assumptions, which we sometimes have to do in these types of questions because it's asking us for our next troubleshooting step. So of these 5, the thing you should do next is restart the print spooler. That is the thing you should do, is restart that. This is where you're going to run into situations where there might be a corrupted print job. In fact, you may end up having to stop the print spooler, delete all the print jobs, and then start the print spooler up again, just to get rid of a corrupted print job that might be inside of it. This is one where if there's nothing else showing a problem, and you have a bunch of things in the queue, they should be printing. They should be going. Why are they not going? A very easy step is to go to the spooler that's in charge of this printer, stop it, restart it again, to have those things go there. That one job may be your big issue. So you may want to look through that queue and see what options are there. Now in the chat, people are saying, well, it didn't have any messages on the printer, but it didn't say it was okay. Well, usually printers don't say anything if they're just fine. In fact, the printer I have here stays powered off until I send it a job. It's completely black on the screen. I think it might even say on the screen, if you look closely, there's not even a backlight. It just says standby. There's just nothing there. The printer's not giving you any feedback that there's an issue. Really the best option here, your next troubleshooting step, restart the print spooler. Now, what if you did that to the point of the people that are in the chat room? What if you restarted the print spooler, still didn't do anything? All right, well, then we can continue. In fact, that may be the point where you power cycle the printer. Maybe something has gotten the printer completely locked up, which does happen. So that's one of those that really does come in handy. So power cycling the printer, probably this, if I asked you what would be your second troubleshooting step, power cycle the printer. Of those 5 things, that's what I would do. You certainly don't want to reboot the user's laptop and print again. We already know there's 7 jobs in the print queue. We're not having a problem getting jobs into the queue. That's not the problem. The last thing you want to do is send another print job into the queue. That's just going to reprint waste more paper when the printer's finally working. 5% of you said replace the printer's network cable. Well, we have had no indication on the printer that there's any issue with the network at all. And swapping out network cables, if we know the printer's been working and now all of a sudden it is not, it's probably not a network cable issue that we're running into. So probably not the first thing we would do. Maybe after doing testing and we get out our multimeter, we get out our cable tester, we get out our TDR, and we find somebody jammed the printer up against the wall and it bent the cable, you might run into that. But we didn't have any indication from the printer there were any problems there. Not our next troubleshooting step. Still a pretty good troubleshooting step, though. Something you should keep in your back pocket. You may have to do that eventually. And lastly, reboot the user's laptop. Oh, we did that one. Install the latest print drivers on the client laptop. Again, we're getting print jobs to the queue. The problem's not on the user side. It's after that. So that's the next step. Yes, by the time, as they're saying in the chat room, by the time you got the call, the ticket is open. There's 150 print jobs in the queue because they just keep printing and printing. It's not working yet. Let me send 10 more. It still isn't printing. Send 10 from your computer. It's still not printing. We should probably call someone. And that's usually what happens with that. So your answer in this particular case is the 58% of you that chose restart the print spooler. That is exactly the right answer. That's where you should go with solving those types of problems. All of the questions we went through in this first hour come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you do not have the exam objectives, you have got to do this. Go out to professormesser.com/objectives. Get the exam objectives. They are an extremely large and comprehensive list of everything you need to know for your exam. They will tell you everything you need to know for your exam. So make sure that you go out to professormesser.com/objectives and get a copy of those. They're going to come in handy for you. You're going to definitely want that. If you don't have them, you're doing yourself a disservice. Let's also keep in mind that we do one of these study groups once a month. I do an A+ study group twice a month. So Thursday, 2 days from now, on November the 7th, we have a study group for the 220-1002. And then next month, on December 3rd and December 5th, we have our study groups again. You can also go to my website and go back and look at all of the previous study groups. All the replays are there. Make sure you have all of those available. And if you're looking at this replay and it's well after December, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and you'll know exactly when the next study group is going to be. Well, we've come to the end of an hour and 11 minutes. We did a little bit of extra today, but don't worry, we're not done yet. There's an after show where I stop asking questions. I open up the phone lines, I go to the chat room, and I take questions directly from you. So you're welcome to ask me questions in the after show. Don't forget about getting your daily A+ pop quiz question on the Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. Please subscribe. Please like these videos. It does go a long way. It's something you can do for free, and it helps us directly to do that. Another thing you can do is check out our course notes at professormesser.com/1000notes. And of course, you can support us on Amazon. Another thing that also directly supports us that you can do absolutely free by going to professormesser.com/Amazon. Thank you for being here in this first hour. Thanks for answering those questions. Thanks for being here every month. We'd love to have you here. Stick around for the next hour. We'll open up the phone lines. We'd love to be able to answer any questions you might have. Thanks for being here, though, for this first hour. We will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. All right, everybody. Let's see if I can get the after show going. There we go. Let's see what we can do here. I need to call in and get the after show phone lines up and running, and then we can easily get your questions. I will be taking questions not only from the internet side on the phone lines coming in, but also from questions directly from the chat room. So if you have questions that you would like to go through in the chat room, please feel free to put them in there. I'm monitoring and watching as we go. Let me start up all of these shows. Let me get the phone lines up and running. I have to click a few things on my side, so please bear with me a moment as I do that. It just takes a second for me to get the lines up and running. I'm going to call into my own show. See how that works? I'm using software as a service where I'm calling in to my own show, and then you can call in to the show, which makes it nice. So let's get this going. I'm going to type a few things into my screen.
Enter your 6-digit.
We're going to put some more numbers into my screen, and then it's going to tell me, welcome. Thank you. That means you are able to call in. If you are in the continental United States, you can call in at 855-785-RJ45. Toll-free number, doesn't cost you anything. If you're outside the continental U.S., you can still call me for free by using Skype. There's no Skype minutes required when you call a toll-free number. You just put a +1 at the beginning. So put +1, 855-785-7545, and you can call in there as well. And so questions from the chat room. Some folks are asking, going back to those questions we asked about virtualization. One of the questions asked, which do I recommend? VMware, Hyper-V, VirtualBox, Parallels? Well, any of those will work. They're all fine applications, all fine virtual machine managers that you can load up on your desktop. There are some free options available from VMware. They make it very hard to find the VMware player, but it is available for free on the VMware website. They try to make you buy their full-blown version, which is not entirely necessary for the things you're doing. So just for that reason, because they make it so hard to find, I usually don't recommend that. One platform that works on Linux, on Mac, on Windows, and it works exceptionally well is VirtualBox. That's one very useful to use, and I use that one also on my computer. And then the others there, Hyper-V from Microsoft, Parallels are also a good application. They all have minor advantages and disadvantages between them, but you really can't go wrong for the type of thing that we're doing here. By going to each one of those, load one up. VirtualBox is free. You can download some VMs from modern.ie. I'm going to pull that up on my machine so you can see what modern.ie looks like. Modern.ie is a developer site from Microsoft. This is what it looks like. It will redirect you to developer.microsoft.com / probably Microsoft.edge eventually. It's designed for Edge developers to be able to run their Edge apps in different operating systems. And so under the Tools pull-down menu right there at the top, they have an option for virtual machines, and they allow you to download Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10 as full-blown, ready-to-run Windows virtual machines, no money required. You just install them and run them. As long as you're using these VMs for non-production purposes, you're using them for lab purposes, using them to study for your certification, perfectly legitimate use. It completely meets the requirements of the end user license agreement that I have looked through, so I can tell you that. So very easy for you to go through and learn all of those. Have a look, and it's nice to have something for free every once in a while. The website modern.ie, MODERN, the modern world. Modern.ie for Internet Explorer is what that is. So that may help you as you're trying to find something to install. You're trying to work with virtual machines. You're trying to learn more about these Windows operating systems as you get into your 1002 studies. It's all there. It's all available. All nice to have. So it comes in handy to have that there. Another thing that might come in handy is those exam objectives. I mentioned at the end of the show to get those objectives. They really are important to be able to have that there. So make sure. Also make sure, another good tip, make sure you have all the latest exam versions that you're studying from. So if your book says the 22901 or 22902, throw those books out. You need a book that says the 221001 and the 221002. Those are the latest versions of the exams, and that is now worldwide. So at the end of October, we just passed October 31st. That was the end of the 900 series for the rest of the world. We finished up the 900 series for English speaking at the end of June, end of July, somewhere in there. And now that's the end of October, 900 series no longer available for anybody. So there you go. That might help you as you're trying to figure out which way to go with this. Another question in the chat room. In one of my older videos, one of those old ones, I mentioned Microsoft / Cisco user groups. Another great thing to do, by the way, if you're planning to meet the IT professionals in your area, you're looking for a job, you want to meet people in the industry, you want to become familiar with what jobs are out there in your area, highly recommend you go to Microsoft user groups, you go to Cisco user groups, you go to technology user groups in your area. How can you find the user group in your area? And one of the things you can do is, first, the Google works perfectly for things like this. You can look for Microsoft user group in the name of your city. You can look for Cisco user group, the name of your city. That's a good way to do it. I've also seen that a number of the people that manage those user groups will put them on websites like meetup.com. I think that's a good one. There are sites, if you go there, meetup.com, that's a legitimate site. That's a real thing. There it is. It is a place where you can go if you want to meet. Like in my area, there's people that take walks. There's game night. There's a mastermind workshop. There's people that are doing nature photography. There's the Sister Soldiers. I think that's probably not for me. There's the women's social meetup. Again, not for me. But there's whole different sections. I'm going to go to the tech section. What's in my area? A WordPress meetup, Python, NoSQL, Capital City.net users group. So just in my area, a number of different user groups for technology. That's another great way to find them. So use that meetup.com and you can go to the Sister Soldier and then go over to the Microsoft user group, and it's a whole day. You got plenty to go through. I like the idea of going to the going on the photography thing. Sounds good to me too. So be a different things to go through for all of those. That is one. Meetup's pretty good. And of course, you can always ask people in your area. Cisco user groups are very common, but it might be, as you've seen in my list, there's some user groups here, probably not exactly what I would go to, but Python is a very common automation scripting language that is used commonly in IT these days. That might be a good one to go to. Maybe some of these JavaScript. I don't know if I go to JavaScript, but if this was limited, I don't see Microsoft on here. I don't see Cisco in here. And my particular neck of the woods doesn't have a huge area of Microsoft and Cisco. It might be an opportunity for you to start a Microsoft user group in your area. So there may be things that could really help you for getting a meetup together. If nobody else is doing it, you can always put a posting out on meetup.com and do exactly the same thing. So it becomes handy to have that functionality there. Have all of those. So other people in the chat room, a lot of you asking about resume tips. And I'm not very good at resume tips. I haven't written a resume in a while now. I try to keep mine up to date, but I haven't. I'm the only one here now. So I have my marketing manager and there's me. So I'm the one that would be looking at the resumes. Having a good resume, though, there's a science to it. And there's a lot of great YouTube videos and places to go on the internet to be able to look at resumes. If you haven't done some optimization of your resume, what most people will tell you, and I'll tell you it's probably true, is that first top third of your resume is incredibly important. Your name, where you live, and then what you're doing right now. That's really the top. In fact, many times I've walked into a job that I am interviewing for. I'm thinking about the last job I interviewed for, and this was a number of years ago. It was with a startup. The people in the startup did not have time to sift through resumes. They were just having resumes thrown at them. They're walking in the room, they grab a paper, or I'm giving them my resume for the very first time. They've never seen me. They've never seen my resume, but now they have to interview me. So they're not going to sit there and go, well, sit there for 5 minutes. Let me read through this. They're not going to do that. They're going to glance at the top. Oh, your name's James. They're going to, oh, here's what you do now. All right, let's talk. And they don't even go through the rest. It's almost up to you to mention, well, as I mentioned on the second page of that resume where I did this thing, there's something you should know about there that might help you make a decision about whether I'm good for this job or not. So you kind of have to work those in there. But the resumes become important. That first top third, incredibly important. The first top page, super important. And then it goes from there. I'm probably not the best person. I don't focus on resume optimization. So I would probably tell you bad things to do. Don't listen to me when it comes to creating a resume. You can work other things there. Plenty of resources, though, on the internet to help you out with those. And ultimately, there's no super secret sauce in resume creation. It's really a key set of fundamentals. If you have those in place, you'll do fine. Also, questions from the chat room. Professor, I just got a job with Cisco. Congratulations. As a TCC engineer, what would you recommend for me to start reading or studying that would help me at work? And one of the great things about getting these engineering positions at the larger organizations is you're going to be taught a lot of good information right out of the gate. Everybody has a lot of very good training materials for onboarding. So if you're in an engineering position, you're in a sales engineering, you're in a, there's always usually a new hire process to go through. So that process is going to take you through, here's what you need to know about the company, but they're going to teach you what you need to know to be able to do your job. Now, obviously, they're expecting you to have a certain foundation, and you have to be able to work from that foundation. But if you ever work into a scenario where you are in this engineering position, it's time to start reading the manuals. It's time to start getting some hands-on. You're going to be hit with a lot of details in a very short period of time. There's no way you're going to be able to learn everything they tell you right out of the gate. So don't be worried about that. It's going to be one of those scenarios where they're explaining to you, all right, here's the setup process. We're going to plug it in. We need to get the serial cable. When you log in, use the default username admin. When you get there, the command you want to use is IP address. Here's the name of the IP, subnet mask. Put the name of subnet mask. Put your gateway here. Hit save. Click go. Reset the system. Plug in. By that time, you're still writing, and you haven't even done the hands-on yet. So don't worry too much about it. You're going to have plenty of hands-on time. Just make sure you make a note of all these things. Make an idea of here are the things you need to know to be able to do the minimum of your job. And then it's a matter of just learning as you go. One of the things that you will never, ever do in your job in IT is know everything you need to know. It is simply never done. If you're in a job where you think, I kind of know 90% of what people are asking me, you're in the wrong job. You should be making more money and learning more at another job at that point. You should never feel comfortable in IT. If you're comfortable, I'm not saying that you should enjoy your job, but if you're comfortable with everything you know, and as far as the technical part of your job, you're probably in the wrong job. You need to get a new job quickly. You need to keep growing. That's one of the great benefits of IT, of course, is there's no ceiling. You can constantly keep moving up. You can always find a better, a more interesting, a more challenging, usually a more lucrative position by simply learning more. And one of the things I found, especially if you're in one of these engineering positions, find out where the weak spot is in the rest of the people that are there. Find out what they don't know yet. And usually it's a thing they don't want to know. There's usually a thing off to the side that, or a piece of technology that everybody just hates working with that technology. That should be an enormous spotlight for you to learn everything you need to know about the technology nobody else wants to touch, because you will become an expert in the thing nobody else knows. And at that point, you'll be the one everyone comes to solve the problems. And as it turns out, you'll probably be the one that can actually resolve the problems. And finding those niches becomes really useful in IT. The more niches you know, the more money you will make, the more financially secure you will be. It's not like our entire jobs are constantly us looking for more money, but being able to be financially comfortable in what we're doing in our life is certainly a plus, and IT enables you to do that. Obviously, you want a job that's challenging. You want a job that's around people you enjoy. You want to have something that you like doing, but you can also combine all of those things together with a nice paycheck as well in IT. It's one of the great benefits. I think that's why a lot of us chose this particular line of work, and it's right there. You just need to take it. It's certainly available for those. Questions from the chat room. When you get into capabilities of the operating system and what you need to know, this is really a 1002 question, but somebody asks, I need to study up on Windows and the Linux command line. What are the best resources to learn this? Well, I think one of the best resources to learn the Windows command line and the Linux command line is the Windows command line, the Linux command line. Those are your two best resources. Pop out into a Linux command line. You've already downloaded the VM software, right? There's plenty of Linux VMs that you can download from the internet. Load up your Linux VM, pop open a command line, and start going through the different options. If you look at my video where I work with the Windows command line and the Linux command line, I used resources that you can use as well. They're resources on the internet. So when I perform a trace route to 8.8.8.8, you can perform the same trace route. When I perform an LS, when I perform a PS, when I perform a grep, you can easily do that on your own Linux machine. And you can follow along with my videos as well. So that becomes handy too. Whenever you're trying to figure out how do I get more hands-on? Well, I've done the hands-on right there on my site, on my videos. You can go through and follow me as I'm doing it. So there may be useful things to do with all of those. Another question in the chat room, where are some free tests we can take for the 1001? Rewind an hour, start back with all of those. Be a great place. Well, I do also have, of course, all the replays of the previous study groups. You can go through those as well. I think it's really important that you of course get as much Q&A as possible. There's always those 4 things I always tell you to get, right? You need a book, you need some videos to watch, you need some Q&A, and you need some hands-on. Those are your 4. So as you're dealing with those 4 things, the Q&A becomes a pretty important part of that. That's the way you're able to get feedback on how well did I really learn from the book, the video, and the hands-on. Maybe QA is the 4th thing. It's the thing you do just before taking your exam. And it should point out for you the things you don't know yet. You're not necessarily trying to get the best score possible when you're going through these sample exams, but you want to find out where are things I don't recognize. Where are the topics that threw me when I started reading this question? There's a abbreviation I didn't recognize. This acronym is unfamiliar to me. What is that acronym? You need to make notes of those. Even if you happen to read through the question, you guess you got it right, don't just keep going. You need to go back to that question. Did I understand what all of those answers meant? Did I understand what that abbreviation really meant in the question? It should take you a long time to go through a sample exam because there should be things popping up in there you don't recognize unless you're really solid now. If you've studied this and it's solid, now you're starting to go through these at a pretty good clip. I knew everything that was in that question. I knew what every one of those answers was. We'll just keep going through them. You should, in fact, be able to pick out sample questions that have been improperly graded because you know the answer really was something else. That's when you know you're really good at this, is you're able to pick out questions online that were put together very, very haphazardly and they didn't choose the right answer. They're telling you it's one thing, you know the answer is really something else. I think a lot of people consider that to be, for some reason, part of the exam experience, and it really isn't. There's plenty of bad practice exams on the internet. The bad practice exams have nothing to do with the good exam you're actually going to take. So don't worry too much. If you're running into practice exams and they're frustrating you and they're poorly written and you don't like the answers they're giving you, for some reason, a lot of people seem to put that back on the real exam, and that's not the situation you're going to be in. The actual exam tends to be very focused. It tends to point you exactly where you need to go. It tends to be very specific, and you should be able to look at the answers and know immediately what the answer is. There's not going to be times where you get 2 answers and you think you could do either one of those as the first option. Either one of those would be you're not going to get that on your exam. There will be an obvious best answer if you know your stuff. So make sure you know that. We talked earlier, in fact, about strategies on the exam. So all kinds of different strategies. Some people like to skip over their performance-based questions. They like to go through the multiple choice-based questions because they feel that those will help them remember things better. And as they finish the multiple choice, they can come back to the performance-based questions because on the CompTIA exams, you can hop to any question at any time. Now, as I mentioned earlier, that's not something you can always do with this because if you take a Cisco exam, Cisco exams start you at question 1. When you submit question 1, that's it. You can't go back. You're on question 2. When you submit question 2, that's it. You can't go back to question 1 or 2. You're going to question 3. It's a straight line that it takes you on, and there's no jumping around on a Cisco exam. So take advantage of that. That's a great strategy to not spend a lot of time on a question. Don't feel like you have to answer it right now. If you're reading the question, you think, I know nothing about this, let's just go to the next one. So that you can get through all the questions you do know first, then you can circle back to the ones you don't know. I think that's an important strategy too, is working. You got to be able to work the exam. Don't just walk in cold with no plans of we'll just do one question at a time. I'm going to finish question 1, then we'll go to question 2, and we'll go to question 3. You're missing an opportunity. There's a whole strategy to test taking that goes well beyond answering the questions. You have to make it work for you. Now, some people have told me, no, I like to do the performance-based questions first. They like to get into those, which is great. Find the strategy that works for you. Do the performance-based questions first and then run through the rest of the multiple choice. Find the things that make sense for what you're trying to do. Everybody has a different way of working. When I sit down on an exam, an engineering exam, it really is a challenge for me. I get very excited, hyped up, anxious when I'm walking into the exam. I sit down, things are moving very fast. I'm reading through the first question and I don't understand what it said. It's written in English. It's clearly written in a form that I should understand. I read the question. I don't know what it said. I'll go up to the question, and the question will say, I'll just give an example. A network printer is no longer operating. A check of the queue shows 7 jobs waiting to print. There's no messages in the printer, which the following is be your next troubleshooting set. What did it ask? It asked something. Let's do this again. Network printer is no longer operating. A check of the queue shows 7 jobs waiting to print. I'm so anxious I can't even read. I'm not understanding what I'm reading. And I have to kind of settle down. I have to kind of get the adrenaline out and kind of, okay. Have some calming breaths before starting the exam so that a network printer is no longer operating. Check of the queue. Now I'm starting to interpret what it's saying. It takes me a few minutes once I get in there. This is a common problem. I'm not a great test taker. So find the thing that works for you. If skipping over them makes sense, then going with the next, or do the calming breaths, or take a step back, look at the ceiling for a moment, then step back into it. That extra 10, 15 seconds you take can help you through the rest of the exam. That's one of the reasons I wrote, for those of you taking the Network Plus exam, people give me grief all the time about the 7-second subnetting process. If you haven't gotten to this with A+, but for your Network Plus people, it's a very involved process for doing subnetting without any math. And most of the involvement requires you to write down these charts. And they're not small charts. There's these pretty big charts I write down, but mathematically, they can be written down very quickly. In less than a minute, I can write out the chart. And then during the exam, primarily Cisco exams, because there's so much subnetting on a Cisco exam, I can easily point at one thing, point at another thing, and I know the answer to the subnetting question. It's not that subnetting is hard. It's just that I can't function during an exam. When I'm not in an exam, I don't use the 7-second subnetting process. And most of the time I can do it off the top of my head. But during an exam, it's a completely different animal, and you should be prepared for that. You should be prepared that it's going to be different than when you're sitting at home taking a sample exam. So just be ready for that and find a strategy that works for you. There's a lot of different ways to do that. To have that. For those of you who haven't seen this yet, don't do this for your A+. But if you're on Network Plus or doing Cisco, there are tricks for doing subnetting. There's the magic number trick. There's you can do things with your fingers, powers of 2. There's that trick. There's looking at a pie chart and finding that trick. And then I have my own way of doing it, which is 7-second subnetting, where I can find the subnetting answer in 7 seconds or less with a chart that I draw. So people do different things in different ways. I'm not mathematically functional during an exam. So don't ask me to do a magic number or do any calculations with powers of 2. That's one of those that you will run into. Yes, there is. The reason it's 7-second subnetting is the alliteration. Sounds great, doesn't it? But it's true. It's a real thing that I've done. And it's not something I created. It's just a mathematical conglomeration I've stuck together to explain to people my neurosis during the exam and how if you have the same neurosis, maybe this will work for you. It's one of those, I think. And it works great because now I can walk the exam. I'm solid. Like, let's get the Cisco exam done. Boom, 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 boom. Done. And there is no math. That's the beautiful part. Well, you have to add 1 or subtract 1. That's not really math. So that's easy to have those there. Makes it simple to have that capability there. So if you're someone who's also planning for your exam, take that into account as well. On the chat room, some people asking about, am I selling practice tests? For A+, not at the moment. Actually, I have plans to have a practice exam book available in the upcoming months for A+, for the 2 A+ exams. I think that a lot of people are asking for those. For those of you that have been following along, if you're taking Security Plus, you'll notice I have a Security Plus practice exams book, which is everybody's just taken off with. That's really been very successful. So I want to do the same thing for A+. Clearly, people want some quality practice exams that are similar to the exam, that have not just the answer, but it explains why the other answers, not why an answer was correct, but why the other answers were wrong. Links back to my videos. It's just one of those things I think would be useful. So I'm working on it. We're getting there. It takes a lot to write a book. So this takes months. It's not going to be done next week. This takes months to be able to do that. So that's one of those just to think about. It'll be coming soon. So I got plenty to do during the holidays. There's work that I will be doing for sure. Other questions. Do hospitals allow you to volunteer at their IT department? Not usually. Most of the volunteering at a hospital is done outside the scope of user data. IT departments generally don't do volunteering. Generally, nonprofits are a good place to go to find volunteering for IT. And there may be places you can find that in your local area. Ask around if there's a church, if there's a nonprofit organization, you happen to know people at those organizations, you can ask around and see if they have someone, maybe just keep their antivirus up to date. Make sure the systems are running antivirus. Make sure they have their latest patches. There's a certain set of things you can do that can really help these companies keep their systems running. And you have the knowledge, so why not take advantage of that and do some volunteering with those? What can you expect the salary to be after passing your Security Plus exam? Who knows? That's a wide range, depending on where you live, depending on what jobs are available. And I'm seeing a few more entry-level security jobs available in the world, but generally speaking, you don't start in security. Generally, you start in something that is in networking, in help desk, and then maybe you start at help desk, you move up to networking, and then finally you make it into security. So I would not focus on jumping into security right after a Security Plus, but you now have the knowledge you need to understand how to layer that on top of the networking piece of it. I think networking is probably the best vector into security that you'll find. So if you want to easily get into IT security, I think the best path continues to be through the network team. It just seems to be a very obvious way to get there because there is so much networking in IT security. It's so network intensive. So you have to be an expert in networking if you ever hope to become an expert in IT security. Very, very solid. Can you jump from getting the A+ and then to the CISSP? Probably not. Well, of course, the CISSP is a certification exam that requires that you already have a certain amount of practical experience in the industry. So generally, if you're getting the A+, most people are getting the A+, do not yet have those 5 years of experience that you need. Is it 3 or 5 years for the CISSP? So you don't have the experience yet to get the CISSP. So you really aren't going to jump into that. I think it's one of the reasons the CISSP is such a solid security certification, because the people who have it already have a certain foundation of actual experience in IT. So that's one of those where that's one that you would focus on. So you probably wouldn't jump from an A+ to a CISSP. No, and it doesn't make sense. If you're getting a job for A+, they're probably not going to look at you to have the knowledge and experience that someone would need to get into a position that is asking for a CISSP. IT and moving up in IT is a series of blocks. It's a stepping stone. You're going up a set of steps. Very rarely are you able to jump over a step, or certainly not jump over a large number of steps. Usually you start with a certain fundamental set of knowledge, then you build on that and go the next step, then you build on that and go the next step, then you build on that and go the next step. So that's why I mentioned that is you would probably want to first start with one step and then find out what the next step is going to be. There was, in fact, one of the people that talk about this, I've mentioned this in other study groups, is you go to an interview and they sometimes ask you that ridiculous question, especially for IT, which is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Which is, in IT, that's a ridiculous question because the industry changes dramatically in 5 years. There's no way to tell what the world will look like in 5 years because we don't know what's coming next, and it always tends to change dramatically in a very short period of time. What we really should be thinking about from a career perspective is, what do you want to do next? So focus on that. When you're in a job in a help desk, you're able to look at a lot of different jobs. You're working with the database management team. You're working with the server management team. You're working with the data center facilities team. You're working with the networking guys. You're working with the security team. You're working with the IT project managers. You're looking at all these different roles. You should be able to look at one of those roles and go, I'd like to do something like that. I'd like to be database management. IT security is interesting. I could probably get there if I work through the networking team. Network is where I should work on going next. Once you know where you're going, now you can set a strategy. It never works the other way. People often ask me, hey, what certification should I get next? I don't know. What do you want to do? What's next for you? Yeah, where are you now? And what do you want to do next? You have to figure that out first. If you are working at a help desk, you think the database management's really interesting, you probably want to go get a database, some more database knowledge. Maybe it's Oracle that you're using, so you need more Oracle certifications. Maybe you're looking at the network team, you think that networking stuff's pretty cool. Then they're going to tell you you need more Cisco certifications. Or maybe you're looking at server management, the server team. I'm liking that operating system stuff. Oh, well, you need to go get a Microsoft certification. You need to get a Linux certification. Those are things you need to focus on. So one of those is really the challenge is finding what's next and then determining what do I have to do to get to that next step. So you move up, you go to the network team. Inside the network team, they're going to say, you're going to decide there, what's my next step? Do I want to focus on WAN technologies? Do I want to focus on the switching infrastructure? Am I in the routing team? Or maybe I want to move into security. What do I have to do to get to the next step? So always constantly be trying to figure out what's on that next step and then how to get there. That's going to be the real challenge, probably the hardest part of what you do in IT. And part of the challenge is that you can do so many different things to be able to get to that next step. You can choose so many different directions those steps are going to take you. So focus on that. And you'll find sometimes it will surprise you that you'll start moving in one direction and then all of a sudden everything shifts in the industry and you end up going another way. Perfectly normal. Perfectly normal to have those things there. Other question in the chat room. We talked about this a little bit in the pre-show. Question was, what is my opinion on the relation with programming and IT security? There is no relation between IT security and programming. There's none. There is zero. They keep telling us there is. There's not. There's not. Now, there is in IT everything a need to automate. There is a need throughout IT, no matter what you're doing, server management, database administration, workstation administration, networking, security, all of that is about automation. They keep saying DevOps. There's DevOps. It's not a thing. There is no way that you can have somebody knowledgeable enough in application development, which, by the way, is not what they're talking about, but they think they are. That you can't build an app and then also manage the operational side of that app. Now, fortunately, for the most part, the people that know what they're talking about, that's not what DevOps is. What they're really talking about is being able to take operations and automate it. Operations and automate it. That really is the most important thing, but it's not something new. It's something that we have been doing since we started working with computers, because computers are ultimately the automation tools. They will allow you to automate everything. We've been doing scripting forever. We've been doing batch files and Perl scripts and other automation techniques forever. So this is not something new. Now, what's new is the need to do even more automation. And it's really the advent of cloud computing that has brought this to the forefront. Before, we were pretty good at automating. It was something that helped us out with what we did. But now there truly is a need to do orchestration of these cloud-based systems and being able to, at a glance, have these systems immediately without any type of other controls. The system recognizes, hey, it's getting a little busy. Let's spin up some new application instances, which means we need some web servers, we need some middleware, we need some databases. Let's spin up some new ones, deploy them into different parts of the country or different parts of the world, and put them into production, and do it without ever knowing any human being ever touching a button and doing that. It just happens automatically. Now, the complexities around that are tremendous. It is so difficult to properly orchestrate that particular, just that one thing. That's a very basic and fundamental aspect of application, of orchestration of these applications. Very basic. So when you start getting into the DevOps thing, I think a lot of people think, and what perhaps don't understand, it's not about programming languages now merging together with IT, security operations, or cloud. Programming languages are a completely different animal altogether. Learning C++, developing an app, developing a mobile app, developing a Windows 32 binary, developing an app that's running on Linux, that's a completely different animal. That takes years and years and years and years to be able to become proficient, much less to become very knowledgeable at what you were doing. And then IT is just as complex. Being able to understand the routing and the switching and the management of those, and be able to get the operating systems and the Windows and the Linux and all of the patches and the applications running on top of them and the databases and the storage and the networking and the security. All of those alone take years to become proficient at, much less to have an expertise. So there's no way you're going to be able to take programming and operations and cram them together and get anything worthwhile. Can you cram them together? Oh, yeah. You're going to get a bad programming combined with bad operations, and it doesn't work. But that's not what they're talking about when they say DevOps. They're talking about being able to properly orchestrate and manage these cloud-based systems. Fortunately, it's really scripting. That's it. Scripting. Now, if somebody's doing programming, that's on your computer science side. It has nothing to do with what we're calling IT. Let's separate those into two categories. You have computer science, you have IT. Those are two different worlds. And they should be, because they're so complex unto themselves that there's no way you get one person to know all of this. So that is the real challenge when somebody presents these new fancy jobs that say DevOps. It's the same job we've always done. There's just more scripting. That's it. So that's why it's not new. It's not now there's new technology underneath. We're scripting new things. We're scripting a new style of making these things happen, but it's not some tremendously remarkable change to the IT infrastructure. It's not really doing anything we haven't always done, which was really script things well. One of the things that's great about this, of course, is you have things like Python, which has become kind of the de facto scripting now that we are doing. We're sort of taking that and we've decided that's what we're going to script the cloud with. Let's all learn Python and we're going to script it with that. And it's incredibly useful and fits that perfectly. So let's go with those things that we're doing with Python. Makes sense. Python is not programming. Python is scripting. You're not building an iOS app in Python. You're not building an accounting system in Python. That's application development. That is development. That is dev. Really should be calling script ops. Really what it should be called, right? It should be called orchestration ops, orc ops. It doesn't sound good. And so that's why I sort of poo-poo the name DevOps. I do not in any way poo-poo what the DevOps folks are doing. I think that makes sense. To be able to automate these cloud-based systems is incredibly important. To be able to, especially these days, where you have such dynamic changes in what's happening on networks with applications, being able to keep them up and running constantly, have a worldwide scope to be able to do this in, incredibly important to be able to do that. So yes, spend your time understanding Python. Spend your time understanding these cloud-based systems and how they operate. Understand how to use Python to interact with those APIs. But that's not programming. It's never been programming. So don't let people kind of sway. I've heard people say, I'm going to stop doing this network stuff because DevOps is important, so I'm going to learn C++. Well, that's great, but you're never going to use that. You should be spending your time learning Python, which, by the way, it's not the same as learning C++. The complexities of Python are nowhere near the complexities that you would need to be able to learn a programming language. It's a different world. So as long as you balance it right, you get those two things together, and they really are balanced properly between the two. You're really understanding what is expected of a DevOps role. You're fine. That's how that works. And some of you in the chat room have said, "Yeah, I've done programming. I understand the pieces of that. I've worked with these before." Great. That's what you do. But if you're somebody who is a network administrator, you're handling your IT security team, you're working with server administration or workstation administration, you don't need to know C++. That's not your thing. That's not even close to being what you need to know. In the chat room, other questions. So when am I doing a Python course? I don't plan on taking any Python. Oh, you mean creating a Python course? Oh, no, I don't have any plans doing any Python courses. I use Python a lot. I don't know that there are any good Python certifications. Part of my my goal here with this YouTube channel and what we do here at Messer Studios is to focus more on the certification side. There are certainly things you need to know that are outside the scope of certifications. Python is a good example of that. But I want to build resources. What we say casually here is I want people to get a job or get a better job. And one of the best ways to do that is for you to get a certification that you can put on your resume and say, I know everything that certification expects me to know. So my focus, if I were to do another course, it would almost certainly be one associated with the certification. So that's why Python incredibly popular. I mean, I see people doing it, but there's a lot of people doing Python on the YouTube and other places. So there's a lot of coverage. So I don't feel like I'm not giving you things that you need or that you're missing out on this. There's plenty of places to get that content. So I'm probably not focusing on that, at least not at the moment. I want you to get the next cert that you need to be able to do that. And along those lines, and of course, now the questions in the chat room are starting up. So what's that going to be? How about Linux Plus? How about CISA? How about, there's a lot of different options. There's a big list to be able to pull those up and have a look at what those lists of things happen to be. And I do have a big list, but I don't know. I sort of know what I think it's going to be, but I just haven't decided yet. It's never really decided until I sit down and start working on it. And right now, I want to get these practice exams done for A+, so that you folks have more Q&A that you can work on, high-quality Q&A that you can work on, high-quality H2O that you can really go through and really get some good. There's just not enough. There's not enough good Q&A out there. So that's what I'm working on right now. And once I finish those, and then we'll figure out what the next thing is going to be for those. And know exactly where those. What is an example of when you will need to know Python in the field? If you're doing anything in the field, you need to know Python. There you go. Are you planning to deploy an application to Windows machines? Are you planning to do an inventory of a particular library that's on a Linux machine? Are you planning to pull data from a firewall so you can create a graph of access times of a particular user? Are you looking to automatically copy some files from switches and routers in your environment to a centralized server. All these things, normal operations, normal processing, normal scripting that we always do, that's what we do Python for. All those, anything that you need to do where you don't want to have to do it all the time. Let's say you have 70 switches in your environment and your manager says, we need backups of these things. So I want to back up every single switch configuration every hour of every day, and I want to store them in a centralized place. Where you're going to sit at your desk all day and just log in to 75 switches every day, copy the file, store it on there, and then every hour, of course not. You're going to automate that process. So what a great way to have Python automatically log in to all 75 switches, transfer down the files, store them on a server, archive them for that day and that hour, and then wait an hour and do it again. And you never touch it, which is great because then you walk into the office on a Monday morning and there was a storm in Louisiana and lightning hit your facility and the switch got blown up. It doesn't work anymore. They're deploying a new switch right now. A person will be on site in 4 hours and you need to get that configuration back up and running. Well, I've got the latest backup right here. My Python script did that for me, and I wasn't even here. There's a good example of that. Now, people in the chat room say, well, you could automate yourself out of a job. Actually, you could. If your job was to completely structure or build out an infrastructure that would react and change things automatically based on a series of scripts that you've written, you could. But that's a very narrowly focused job. Rarely anywhere in the industry do you find anyone who has a job that's all they do. That'd be more like a job that's on contract. For 6 months, you're working here, you're going to build this thing out. Yes, you're going to script yourself right out of a job, automate yourself out of a job, hopefully, because that's actually what you're contracted to do. If you're finished with automating that piece of it, there's plenty more stuff to do on the other side of the desk. You've got a big pile of things you have to go through in most environments. So don't worry about that. How long do I think someone should expect to study for the A+ certifications before being ready to take the exams? There is no specific number. There's no specific amount of time that anyone has to study and then they're ready, because everybody has already a different level of knowledge coming into this. People learn at a different rate. I would say on average, there's probably about 2 to 3 months that people will study before they take the 221,001, and another 2 to 3 months before they take the 221,002. So you're talking about 4 to 6 months total for both of them on average. Now, some people have come to my site. They went through my videos in a couple of days. They studied the rest of the week, and then they went out a week later and they took their exams. That's not common. That's not normal. That's not average. That's somebody who already had some knowledge. They already were working with a certain set of base knowledge that they were going into this, but they just needed that cert because their manager wanted them to have it. Their job wanted them to have it. They're applying for a job that's a minimum requirement for the job, which happens. So they show up and they learn it in a week and they're done. They do a week for each one. They're finished. That's not common. Most of the time it's 2 to 3 months. The real key to know how long it's going to take you is you get the exam objectives and you start checking them off. It's your checklist. Just use that exam objectives. I'm going to pull up the exam objectives on my screen just so you can go through them. So let's go through the 1001 exam objectives. I'll pull up the latest ones. This happens to be my list of things that have changed. Let's pull them up so you can see them. Here we go. And there they are. So there's the exam objectives for the 221,001. So you've got section 1.1, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components. Move this down the screen so, oh, you can't do it. Can't move it down the screen so you can see it because I have it in full screen mode. So the first list, hardware device replacement, keyboard, hard drive, SSD versus hybrid versus magnetic disk, 1.8 inches versus 2.5 inches. Then you have memory, a smart card reader, and optical drive. So there's your first list of things in the exam objectives. Do you know what a keyboard is? Can you replace it? Can you plug it in and get it running? Check. How about a hard drive? What's the difference between an SSD, a hybrid, and a magnetic disk? We should probably know that. If you don't know that, then you have to put an X there. If you do know that, check mark. Let's go to the next. 1.8 inch versus 2.5 inch. What are those? How does that fit into this? If you know that, put a check mark and just keep going through it. So if you can go through that entire list of things, you have all the check marks, then you're ready to take the exam. So that's the one I think that is what you need to do, is go through that list. That's going to help you know, are you ready to take the exam or not? That's the way to do it. Maybe it will take you a week. Maybe it will take you 3 months. If it's me, it takes me like a year. These days, it takes me about a year to prep for a certification exam. I don't take a lot of certification exams these days. I'm building out the certification exam content. But when I had to take certification exams, I would have to really have a long ramp, have a long runway before I was able to take off. So that's the real challenge for me. It takes me it takes you a long time. That's great. That's fine. There's a whole world going on outside the studio. We've got family, and there's things you're responsible for and things you have to do to take up time of what's going on. So that may be your world as well. It's just already have it in your schedule. It's already part of your schedule. Just make sure you have a standard time to study these things, how much you can get in every day or every week, and you will get there. And you'll be able to check those off, and you'll be able to take your exam. That's the real key for you as well. Make sure that that's the way you're going about it too. Will I be doing tutorial videos on the MD100 and MD101 exams? I looked at those. That's another one where we talk about what exam do I do next. Those are the Microsoft exams, the entry-level exams, to entry-level to Windows, entry-level to networking. They have a number of those. Those are the latest versions of those. They keep changing the names and the numbers, but that's the latest ones from Microsoft. You Microsoft folks, you drive us crazy on this side. If your job is keeping up with what Microsoft certifications are doing, it's just nuts. It keeps changing so often. But that is their latest ones. Like I said, I don't know exactly what the next certification one will be for me. I think I do, but I don't know until I get started. And it's going to be months before I get to that point. I've got plenty of things to write right now that can help you get your A+, that can help you get your Network Plus. A lot of things I'm working on here. So I'm going to keep focused on that. And then I'll just keep watching what they're doing over there. By the time I'm ready to start working on something, it's probably going to be a different setup over in Microsoft anyway. They keep changing it so much. I don't think I've noticed the latest structure they put together seems to be pretty well thought out. Maybe they have finally gotten to a certification structure that they're happy with. And it seems to be one that they can build on. I don't know what it's going to turn out to be, but that's kind of where they are. So I don't know. I like the MD100. I like the MD101. I think those are very good entry-level exams. I've looked over the exam objectives. I'm familiar with them because I'm constantly reading through exam objective. I'm constantly trying to figure out what's next. And it changes. I got to tell you, it changes in my head every week. After I finish this, I'm absolutely doing that. And then next week, I'll actually change my mind. Going to do something else. So that's one of the advantages of being nimble in this industry, is we get to move very quickly. But whenever I start a project, it takes months to go through a project. I don't farm this stuff out to someone else. I want to be sure the content that you see in the videos, in the study groups, in the course notes, in the practice exam books, everything I create, I want to be sure is the highest quality possible. So every single word I write, every single slide I create, every single piece of information on the course notes comes from me. So you know that you're getting something that's high quality, but that also is very time consuming. So that's the trade-off, and I'm fine with that. I've already decided that's our corporate structure. That's our corporate culture. That's how we're going to do it here. So that's just how it works. But it just takes time. So I appreciate your patience, but you don't have a choice, because I'm not gonna farm this stuff out. I think the moment you do that, the moment you outsource, you lose control, and ultimately you lose quality. And there's certain things I'm happy losing control of. I don't want to have to do my own accounting. I have outsourced my accounting to someone who's much better at that than I am. I don't want to have to do my own server administration or manage my own data center. I have farmed that out. I outsource that to people who are experts in doing that. But when it comes to creating the content, no, we're not outsourcing any of that for any of those things. Doesn't the CompTIA Security Plus retire next year? I think actually the SY0501 will probably, if it's normal in the CompTIA world, it will retire in 2021, the first part of 2021. So if you're studying for your CompTIA Security Plus right now, you got plenty of time before the 501 even comes close to retiring. So plenty to go through there. So that makes sense to me too, to have those different pieces there. So hopefully that will give you an understanding of where we come from anyway. There's a lot of things you could choose from for your certification studies. There's a lot of different books, a lot of different resources. It is a busy industry. I realize you're pummeled with different options all the time. I just want to be sure that if you ever show up here and this is one of your options, that you know you're going to be getting the best that you could ever possibly get anywhere. And I think we've done very good at holding the line with having the highest quality in the industry. And that's something that I would continue to do. It just makes sense for us. Well, thank you for being here. We could not do these study groups without you. Thanks for being here in the first hour where I asked you the questions. And thanks for being here in the second hour where you can ask me the questions. I like that part too. I think it's nice to have both of those available. We do one of these every month. We do a 221,002 study group 2 days from now. So if you want to come back and do this again with the 221,002 questions, come on back on Thursday. We'd love to have you here for another round. Thanks for being here this time. We'll see you next time on the A+ Study Group.